Hey, what's up, everybody? It's me, Danae, and I'm here with a message for you. Happy Tuesday. Today's April 9th, 2024. It's a wonderful, wonderful day. Like, perfect follow-up from the intensity of yesterday, where the weather was pretty cool, too. It was very mild, but it was a bit cloudy. Today is so sunny. It's like mid to upper 70s. Well, it's mid now, but it's actually climbing just a bit more from now. And the air is just so fresh and sweet. You know, birds chirping, sun is shining, very clear skies, and just amazing. It's more so the sensation of the energy that I find comforting, and I don't know, I'm already at loss for a word here. We ain't even hardly start yet. But I guess sensational, I didn't want to say that again, but that's really what it feels like. It's like, ooh, spring, yay. This pretty much around like this temperature, more or less, is so ideal for me. Of course, if you want to go to the beach or get in water or something, you might want it to be a little bit warmer. But for everyday life, just going about your day, it's like perfect. Not too hot, not cold at all, just a perfect balance. So anyway, I hope you're doing well. I hope you're enjoying the day wherever you are, providing that it is all that I just described, because it may not be the weather where you are, but I still do hope that you're enjoying the aftershocks of the solar eclipse in the most sensational way possible. My nose is itching. All right, so we got the Six of Swords coming out. This was a prominent energy yesterday, not to start, but it was about crossing over, transitioning from peaceful waters to calmer waters. Let's see what's under here. Okay, like out of the hangman phase, and now ready to take action, like having received all of the intel, the enlightenment, the knowledge, and maybe the awakening that has taken place energetically and universally is now what is prompting this forward motion, this transformation of transition, I should say, in spirit and in flesh. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Or it will, or it is, because we are still in Mercury retrograde, but it certainly is a new moon with the the little gentle push, if you see it that way, from the eclipse. It could definitely incite some transition of sorts, but from first like a sedentary place or spirit, more or less, where a lot of us were kind of like in holding for a what's next, or how to, or okay, I've done this, now what? Like, here is the movement. And it still is on water, so it's a matter of continuing to be patient with the journey, I feel. Because what is the hangman? I think is Pisces, I believe. Yeah, so some things come. I hope that I'm right about that. I'm pretty sure, though. So having closed cycles and, circumstances, a great deal of things. It's like when you packed up the house and you're just waiting for the movers to come, or the U-Haul, or for that move out date, you know what I mean? Or when you get to actually leave from one place to the other, there's still an activation of patience and, you know, letting things play out as they must. You know, for instance, if say it is in the fact of a moving from one place to the other, you don't get to move in until you have the keys or until it's your move-in date. You know, you can't just go trample into the new place without having authorization to do so. You know, so everything's just been happening in order. What's this? Yeah, justice. Yeah, it's all cause and effect. It's all happening in order. So perhaps where some may still feel like, okay, I've done this, or the universe has done that, and now what? Like there's this surge of ambition in our bones now, where we feel like it has to be time for this, for whatever is next, or that, whatever you anticipate or are looking forward to. And it is, but just know, I feel like in the mind is where the transition begins, to already be projecting yourself in that place and space, in that identity, in that time frame, more or less, from even this present position of pause, if it still is. But there's a lot of promise here for transition. My incense moved a little bit, throw my stuff off. And what it also says is that you, given this is the next card from here, is that you have packed efficiently. You know, like I said in the analogy of it being like a moving from place to place, you packed you have packed with you exactly what you need. You know how like sometimes when you move from a place, well, for me personally, whenever I've moved, I do a significant purging, sometimes of everything. I have in some ways, and in some places where, you know, that's neither here nor there, but for the most part, it's energetically encouraged, I would say, that you release as much energy from the present place or the past place as possible before you move forward. And that's what's been happening in the transits of the most recent past, and even now, as I said, we're still in Mercury retrograde, where you're still kind of purging, releasing, getting rid of nostalgia, knickknacks, and ideas that, you know, maybe even changing your mind frame, because where you are is not where you're going. So maybe you had to be protective a certain way in the space that you're in, where you don't have to be so. Or maybe you feel like you're ready to activate some sense of protection or protectiveness where you're going, because that's what you were used to here, and maybe you don't have to live. You know, it's like moving from the city to the suburbs, and it's like you would take that. I mean, these days you probably still do have to be on guard, because, you know, energy is everywhere, but you know what I'm trying to say. It's like the purging that gets to happen before you pack up and take, you know, move your life to the next location or to the next space or even to the next opportunity. You know, it could be the next job. It could be a new relationship, or a relationship at all after having been by yourself, or whatever this new experience, this new season of life is. It definitely called for some unloading, some trashing, some releasing of energy to before you get to physically see your way to that next place. I mean, this boat isn't but so big. You know, if you imagine if you tried to bring your entire life from where you are and everyone in it to cross over into this little canoe of sorts, it would probably sink. You know, like you probably wouldn't make it very far, or certainly not very fast. So we've lightened the load. We've and been enlightened to exactly what is most forwarding for the next leg of the journey, and also to what isn't. And now we're primed, if not already, moving forward. Primed to, if not already, moving forward. Yeah. Let's see what else we got. Ooh. Three of Swords in reverse. Three of Cups in reverse. I was going to say it too. I was like, somebody's not too. It's like there's a celebration, but somebody's not too happy about it. Somebody's not too happy about it, about this transition that's happening. Maybe somebody expected you to be stuck in limbo, waiting on some enlightenment or whatever for the rest of your life, and there was a celebration in that regard that has since been overturned. And the way how fun things used to be once upon a time are just not, it just doesn't have the same effect. You know, when you kind of get to that place in life where the partying and the places that used to be fun and entertaining, maybe even the friends, it doesn't even have to be a party. It could be that there used to be a certain experience of pleasure amongst a group of folks that is just not the case anymore. And somebody's like sitting here, they're kind of stuck because what used to be fun in these Three of Cups here overturned is really not hitting for much anymore. But they also kind of don't really want to be a party of one either. Oh man, that sucks. So it's like stuck in limbo because you don't want to be alone, but you don't want to hang out with who you're hanging with. Hence this stuck position here. Interesting, because like I said, somebody thought you would be stuck in the Hangman. Little did they know, the funny thing is, like, the Hangman is not really stuck. Not in any detrimental way, really. It's really a pause for enlightenment, or for more information, or for a new direction, like to be clear about the way forward. So it could be that a lot of people viewed you as being stuck and stagnant or left behind in some way, shape, or form, like everybody else is having a good time partying the way, you know, moving along in life in a certain way. It may have seemed like you were stuck or not moving quite as quickly, but meanwhile you were being enlightened with the Hangman. That's just literally letting life teach you some things, you know, and being okay with standing still in a moment in time, or in a place, or in a posture, until you feel like you've learned all that you need to move forward. Like I said, to pack up before you go elsewhere. And somebody thought you was just making your home where you were, and that was unsatisfactory, you know, from the outside perspective, or from someone else's point of view, you know, that may have lived the fast life or wanted to, you know, that didn't really value slow movement, you know, slow and steady energy. They wanted to get to the next destination as quickly as possible by any means necessary, with whomever would be most effective in that transition. And it doesn't seem like it led to much. You know, this is dissatisfaction with present state of affairs. Like I said, this is really stuck. And it's still all voluntary, because just as the hangman can get down at any given time, like you could get down in the hangman and say, well, forget it, I'm done learning lessons, I'm just going to jump out and do it, and maybe have moved too quickly before you got all that you needed to get to be completely enlightened. Again, like I said, to do that purging, energetically, intellectually, spiritually, to know what should go with you as you step down and move forward, and what needs to be left behind or released altogether. That's somebody jumping into this boat with a whole lot of friends, like it's a yacht, with a whole lot of friends, a whole lot of libations, and, you know, a whole situation, like a party boat. Yeah, that's what it is. Like they created a party boat out of what was supposed to be a lifeboat, and it was overloaded. It either didn't go very far, very fast, as I said, or it sank, probably sank altogether with the Three of Cups. Yeah, because here he is on the shore now. This is like a deserted island. I've never seen it like that before. But in this context, it makes sense. A deserted island, or somebody's just feeling very lonely out on a limb from what used to satisfy them and comfort them and almost like subdue, you know, intoxicate them. That's what it is. Now somebody is maybe forced to be sober. There's some sobriety that's being imposed upon this person in one way, shape, or form. Because this more gives way to inebriation and, you know, something more intoxicating than these cups. But this is like the Ace of Cups, which would be like pure water, you know, that somebody also doesn't want. Yeah, so somebody's stuck between the invitation to heal and move forward, or to go backwards into what they know is just not, it's not healthy, to say the least. Not only is it not healthy knowingly, but it's not even satisfying the way that it used to be. So it doesn't really serve any purpose at all. Or somebody may actually be kicked out of the group. Now that I'm seeing this, like, or this, it was dismantled in some way, shape, or form, like kicked out of some association that they were once, you know, very welcomed in for the most part. And now, yeah, like they're kind of out here on the limb by themselves, deserted on an island. That gives that somebody was kicked out or like banished or outcast. That's what I'm trying to get to. Somebody was outcast. Oh, castaway. Wow. Castaway. So that puts a different spin on this Six of Swords then, when I speak about it like that. But let's keep going. That might be the title. Ooh, wow, exactly. Oh my goodness. Talk about castaway and betrayed. It's like somebody got kicked out of their own boat. Like it was their yacht, their party, their booze. They sent out all the invitations. They get on the party boat and get thrown overboard. And by the grace of God, somehow they swim to shore, but it's a deserted island. There's nobody there, and they know ain't nobody coming back for them. You know, it's like, ooh, what is that? Let me see what's on the bottom. Six of Cups. Yeah, and it was from very familiar energies, even folks that someone, you know, could have like been comfortable with, like almost like family. Could have been family, but it just could have been a friend or associate connection that someone revered to be loyal or as close as or trustworthy as family, but clearly that was not so. Like I said, it was his boat. He invited everybody, and then somehow he became the sacrifice to the sea. You know what message keeps playing in my mind though, as I'm saying this about being thrown overboard? The story of Jonah in the Bible, when he was supposed to be going, that makes sense with the Four of Cups too, because there was this offering of healing where like the spirit, God, whomever, however you see it, that hand that's coming out of the clouds is offering some type of nourishment, and even intuition, like where he should have followed his intuition, but instead he refused, right? But to the point of the story of Jonah, he was commanded by God to go to the city of Nineveh to more or less liberate the people, like tell them, warn them of their transgressions and how the wrath of God was coming upon them if they didn't change their ways, But he didn't want to, because he had a bias and a prejudice against the people, and I guess in his own mind he didn't feel they were worthy of a warning, like to hell with them pretty much. So instead of him going to Nineveh, he decided to go another way, and got on some boat with some other, I forget why he got on the boat, with some fishermen or something. I don't even know what, I guess, because why else? But anyway, he got on a boat to somewhere else, and because of the wrath that was upon him by way of his disobedience, it brought wrath upon the entire crew, to the point where like some big storm came and kind of threatened everybody's lives because of Jonah. Now they didn't know that at the time, but when the question was posed, I forget if they asked the question like, who's angered God, pretty much, or if Jonah just volunteered to say like, look, this is happening because of me. I'm the reason why the ship is being threatened to sink and go down, because God, is angry with me, or it was about a sign, like do what I told you to do, which is kind of what happens in life. But when you consider it practically, when you go against your intuition, like I said, with Four of Cups, even in the most primitive practical sense, but of course not so much, things occur that are contrary to, that are unfavorable, when you more or less go against the grain of your own intuition and what you know to be true for you and what you are feeling called or commissioned to be, do, or whatever the case may be. So we can look at it from the God perspective, we can look at it from the perspective of man, but either way, he was betraying himself because he had a direct order and he resisted it, okay? So that's what this is giving here. Oh, so when they threw him out, so ultimately, I didn't even get to that. So they pretty much decided, well, we got to get rid of you because the whole ship is not going to go down on account of your disobedience. We ain't got nothing to do with that. So that's a small lesson as to how your karma or someone else's karma can affect others by association when you involve yourself with energies that, are out of alignment in their own right. Their retribution can become yours. You could end up paying for somebody else's sins, more or less, to put it plainly. So they decided collectively that we got to throw you over. And so that's the story of, of how Jonah gets thrown over and swallowed by the whale. And then he ends up being spit. I think he spends like 40 days, 40 nights in the belly of the whale, and then ultimately gets spit back onto shore or carried to shore as to where he was supposed to go in the first place. I believe that's how it goes. Or once he got free, he ended up going where he was supposed to go. But either way, he ended up going to Nineveh, where he was resistant to go, in the first place. So it's like either way, first there's so so multi-layered, that story alone. But first of all, it's a matter of being again betraying your own intuition and resisting your commission or call in life, what can happen on account of that, how others can be affected as a result, and also how you will ultimately not be supported, because like I said, it's like they threw him overboard or left him by the wayside. So you could get caught up doing things like maybe the debauchery and the partying and bullshit was okay for this association in their own right, but when you attach yourself to it, it's a different, it could be a different backlash. Like what's good for some may not be good for you. There may be a higher calling or a higher expectation. Is it expectation I'm looking for? Not really, but a higher standard that you are held to, even just you personally, forget about the spiritual aspect, but just knowing that you out of alignment doing what you're doing with who you're doing it with, because it's a conflict with your natural being, but you do it anyway, and this becomes the result. Now you're kicked out, knocked out, cast out, everybody else goes on with their life accordingly, because you tried to make yourself at home in a karmic cycle or with karmic individuals that you were supposed to perhaps learn a lesson from, but not repeat that cycle. Was for the purposes of you, for all Jonah knew, which ultimately he fucked around and found out, right? He was supposed to go to Nineveh to learn something about his own salvation as well. Now his detour is what actually became, that's a good message. His detour is actually what became the lesson in itself, again, of knowing not to, first and foremost, betray your own intuition or however it is you see that commission and call and ordinance from spirit. And also, the caution of what gets to happen when you do. So lesson learned, but little did he know that was, perhaps that was always how it was going to be in some way, shape, or form, but he decided to take the harder way toward that ultimate enlightenment, back to the freaking hangman. He decided to jump off of that pole and had better plans for himself, where he'd rather go, and ended up getting rerouted anyway. So it all comes back full circle to what I'm saying about allowing yourself to be purged and pruned and to be educated in the way of truth for you. That's why it's a very singular journey, as it is with the position of the hangman. Like, you could look at someone else and think, what the hell are they doing over there? And little do you know, they're literally living their best life by learning the lessons that are ultimately going to put their best foot forward to have the most satisfying life experience. How everybody gets to come to that reckoning and realization looks different, but I do think, just outside looking in, but again, this is my perspective because I'm not Jonah, that perhaps if he had been obedient to his commission to go to Nineveh straight away, even begrudgingly, with gritted teeth, he may have still come to the saving grace of the lesson that he was set to learn, but maybe perhaps not so brutally. Maybe it wouldn't have had to be such a hard lesson, like, like they say, like your grandma used to say, a hard head make a soft behind. At least my grandma used to say that. He may not have had to come to where he was going to be enlightened and learned anyway through such a brutal lesson if he had been submissive to the teachings. You know what I mean? I hope that makes sense. But anyway, somebody definitely learned a hard lesson about cycles that needed to be cut and discontinued, and when somebody just partied a little bit too hard, a little bit too long, with the wrong crowd, at the wrong place, at the wrong time, and eventually they became the casualty of their own debauchery. So let's see. What more? Because I ain't mean to go that long on that, but I saw that story. I had to speak on it. Wow. Yeah, you know, I'm gonna come up a little more. That is crazy. We got the Emperor here. Someone that just refused to surrender control over, well, they maybe refuse to share creativity and control. Because if you think about the story of Jonah, he still had the power of choice, which was in his control. But there was an assignment attached to that command, you know. So if him not going would have set off a chain of events that would have been detrimental. Look, matter of fact, this is this is interesting, because this is kind of like Nineveh. They were doing too much, you know, debauchery and partying, if I remember correctly from the story, like just living so-called unholy lives, you know, just doing everything against the nature of their spirit selves, you know, and it being in a very detrimental way to creation at that time, or whatever the command for creation was. And so someone's, you know, in this case, it's like to refuse to go and bring a word to those people could be the detriment of creation overall, especially when you're choosing to join in on the debauchery. So this is someone that wasn't the case with Jonah, because Jonah just felt like he was better than, which could be this energy as well. Like he felt like he was too sanctified and holy to get mixed up, like, oh well, they should have known better, or they don't deserve to be warned. Like, if you like, I don't know, but that's how he was, you know. He didn't feel like he had a very holier than thou attitude, and didn't have much grace for those that may have been less enlightened, may have still been in that hangman position per se. It's like, oh well, get it how you live, or be destroyed type of energy. So that's giving vibes to the Emperor card and the Empire, which is kind of like a every man for himself type of expression, where there's a relinquish of responsibility over the masses, or is that what I'm looking for? Accountability, more so, for how the power that is wielded here, that is held in the Emperor position, absolutely has an effect on those that are less assuming or more vulnerable. How can I say that better? Like how, let's say, the nation, the government, perhaps, and the Emperor is not necessarily representation of the government overall, but the empire, the mentality of the empire is very every man for himself. Like everyone has equal opportunity, even though everyone doesn't, truly, but that's the posture. Like, I had to pull myself up by the bootstraps, or I, you know, was privileged to have I'm privileged to have this position of power and authority, whether it be inherited or, you know, acquired, however it was obtained. It's like, if you can't get it too, sucks to be you. That type of energy, which is probably why the nation is in the belly of the beast as we speak, more or less, in the belly of the whale, because it's like there needs to be accountability taken for the despair that was incited, when you think about it on a practical scale, with the imbalance of wealth and the misalignment of power, or the mismanagement of power and authority, the abuse of power, let's just call it what it is, how that trickles down into multiple conspiracies, known and unknown, but one that I can definitely say, as of a deflection from yesterday's message, the drug epidemic in this country. There's always some dotted line to a higher power that would have had to have the authority and the access to filter that energy into the nation before it could wreak havoc the way that it has. So it's like, consider the crap, the crack epidemic most specifically, where we now know for certain, because they even make shows about it, it's not even a secret anymore, that the government literally was the direct influence of the influx of drugs, and particularly cocaine, that flooded the country and then spiraled into the crack epidemic, which wreaked more havoc than even the cocaine could have. But ultimately, the accountability is still on the establishment, the empire, for turning the other way and honestly opening the floodgates to let it come on in. But what was the turnaround response? To then criminalize drugs, to criminalize drug dealers, to create another layer of despair with the overpopulation of with the pipeline of the drug epidemic to the prison system, and then reaping the benefits off of that financially in every other way, shape possible, but desecrating the families that are left behind in the wake, but reaping the benefits off of that with other, with social programs and other ways to kind of, it's on and on and on. We know how just that one little vial of rock has ultimately almost obliterated an entire culture, and not just exclusive to the Black community, certainly, but definitely heavily concentrated there, But so just in this small, example, because there are many, which is again the point here. But just this small example that I can relate to, that I actually saw and lived through, my personal experience. This is an accountability on the empire that has absolved itself, not only absolved itself, but that has also reaped the benefits of what was incited in the first place. And that is cause for a judgment and a reckoning. Because none of this would have occurred if not for this point of privilege here. So it's like, to whom much is given, much is required. You had this great power and authority. If anything, it could have been stopped sooner. It could have not have been incited in the first place on the casualty of a whole culture, just for the purposes of winning the war or whatever leg up they called themselves getting at that time. But certainly the aftermath requires some sensibility for responsibility. And that there's been an absolution from that, self-absolution of that as well. So it's like, like who gets to pay for this? Who has to answer for this? Not the casualties themselves that have had to incur the injustice of which they didn't even see coming. Like, they didn't even know what was happening when it was happening. And yes, everybody has, the power of choice and all of that good stuff. So even though the substance was flooding the communities, it doesn't mean that people had to try it, buy it, sell it, cook it, transport it, none of that. But if you first of all, when you cause despair in the community to begin with, before crack flooded, because remember, there was already despair with the lack of employment and poor living conditions, and a great lack of social support and programs for impoverished communities, and so on and so forth. That was also incited by the imbalance of the establishment, by the unfairness and the prejudice of societal structures. There wasn't even accountability for that. Instead, the response was, oh, filter cocaine, crack cocaine through the community and allow them to get just, affluent just enough to be cut down, affluent enough to fund our economy and to reboost our economy, or whatever advantage it can bring to the top of the food chain. And then when it's no longer necessary, or when it becomes a menace, then we'll cut them down. And then we'll also make money on the back end when we imprison them and when we impoverish them. It's like, it's terrible. It really is when you really break it down, But I don't even know why I said all that, especially in regards to Jonah, but I'm sure it makes sense. I'm going to move on. But look, here's the wounded warrior left to, with the PTSD of this entire experience, the one left to fight the good fight to live another day. But again, to be yet another casualty to some other systemic systemic sacrifice. When does it end? Now, right now. Because guess what? Now, as this emperor is side-eyeing this sabotage, they're having to now, the nation, the state of the nation is in threat and at risk for things that have been done. And that Six of Cups energy continuously, cyclically, over and over, changing forms just slightly, but the same intrusion of I don't even know what to call it, like impurities in some way, shape, and form, in spirit and in truth. But whatever it is, like that same infraction committed over and over again has now become the problem of everyone, but particularly of the offenders that incited the infraction in the first place. Because now the entire state has been depreciated, the nation has been depreciated from what would be lucrative and profitable and prosperous to roll up to the top. Is much less so because the commodity has been bruised. The commodities have been overused. So it's like they can't even flourish from the profit of this experience anymore. But not to mention, that's the material response, like the physical, natural response. But spiritually, there's going to have to be a reckoning here to transfer this energy of whence was once projected now to be incurred, personally incurred. And where it hurts most, which most likely is, financial, and also in that very same dynamic of power that was the purpose of this incitement in the first place, to maintain this dominance and, command over creation. So now there's a loss of that grip of power. There's a loss of that prestige, that position of authority. And there's going to be a taste of what has been incurred now on account. Not just a taste either. Yeah, exactly. Not just a taste. Here's the Queen of Wands. Wow, here's the Queen of Swords. Oh, I'm sorry, the Strength. I thought I saw Swords. The Strength. Oh. So this is balance to the household. Yeah, see, I'm seeing this so many ways now. Because now I'm seeing the feminine energies who have been sacrificed on account of just the patriarchy just having its way with that energy and building on it. Now I see all of that now having its way on the natural vitality, this empowered energy force here with the Queen of Wands to establish these pillars and establish these positions, but then again just kind of disposing of the energy. Now okay, so what I first saw, what I first saw is what's going to be incurred now as retribution for those acts, those egregious acts. When I said like somebody has been tossed off their own boat, it was supposed to be a party, blah, 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 da, 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 da. This is the energy that's incurred now on this end, as I'm saying, like there's going to be a reckoning for that. What I'm seeing now is it's in response to how those feminine energies were mismanaged in the first place, taken advantage of, abused. That feminine force has been abused here, and now she's upright with the Queen of Wands back in her rightful position, and power and strength has been restored. Balance, has been restored on account of the strength to be resilient to this experience. So it's like what was supposed to be the ultimate defeat and disposal actually ended up being the tool of enlightenment, the experience of enlightenment that would establish strength, or at least assert a higher frequency of strength, as in the aftermath of the hangman, where there was a waiting period, a stillness, where it seemed like the feminine energy couldn't get ahead, or any vulnerable energy, because it could be feminine, but it could also be, as I was kind of putting it before, vulnerable cultures to corruption, as I put it. So it could go either way. But whatever the disenfranchisement was, it did cause a stagnancy to what would have been natural movement. And now but in that stagnancy, there was also a strengthening and an enlightening, where it seemed like they may have been out for the count, whether it was the feminine energy, Black people, poor people, immigrants, whatever the case may be. They seem to be out for the count and kind of at the mercy of the establishment or the powers that were in operation. But that has actually overturned to create balance in spite of great obstacles and opposition, to render this energy here as the Queen of Wands, who's not just a proactive force of creativity, but a reproductive force of creativity that can alchemize all of this experience. And that goes, like I said, because this could be the representation of women, cultures that have been disenfranchised, economical classes that have been disenfranchised, you name it. The resilience is what is most pronounced here on account of that Nine of Wands, PTSD, wounded warrior energy. That someone has still evolved, some peoples, have still evolved in this prominent force here to be able to really now take full control over their own creative force and manifest a desirable outcome for themselves. Of course, with spirit support now, balancing the playing field overall, you know, but certainly just on account of what was incurred that actually worked to build more character, more strength, more courage, and more confidence than what it was supposed to do. It brought stability. To whatever this establishment may be. And it could even be like a platform or literally to a household. I'm seeing it, you know, when I talk about it in the ways that the home was broken up on account of, say, even the drug trade, and homes were broken, men in prison or killed, or, you know, families dismantled, people strung out, passed away on account of their addictions, all types of stuff that happened on account of this infraction. And this is the restoration for legacies to be reestablished, reunited, to be rebalanced, to be restored from on account of what's been lost, to regenerate the population in a more creative, in a more consciously creative way. Now, knowing all that's been incurred, you could never truly have an experience such as the crack epidemic again. Not really, not at that magnitude. It's been dismantled. Now there's new drugs out there that, you know, fentanyl and stuff like that are just as bad, but it's not even affecting the same community of people. That's like the spinoff of what occurred on account of the crack epidemic and heroin even before that. That's also, you know, like the backlash of what was infused and incited or inflicted, I should say, in the first place. But the community that was most impacted by it could never be affected in that same way by a substance such as that again, because we've learned too much, we saw too much, we saw too many people die, had to bury too many friends, too many boyfriends, see too many uncles and fathers and brothers and even mothers and sisters and cousins go to jail or just never be the same spiritual self again, you know, never be well again. We've seen too much now to ever allow that demonic force to wreak havoc again. And it's interesting because, like I said, it's like you never know how the lesson has to get learned for someone to just turn out to be, you know, what casualty must be incurred to come out on top. And certainly in spirit, you know, what's meant for bad can be used for good, even when it should have never been used in the first place, you know. But who knows how having to incur that cost on culture transformed it for the best overall, more than anything ever could have or would have. You know, it's just like you never really know. Who's to say type of energy. And even in the ways that feminine energy has been abused and misused and manipulated, we perhaps would have never come to this point of confidence and security and supreme creativity if not for being suppressed inorganically. We may have never truly come to the knowledge of our natural strength if not being suppressed to our weakest point. So I don't know what's being said here, but I'm saying a lot. Let's get a couple more and then I'm out. Exactly. This was the ambition, the intention, still kill and destroy. What's on the bottom? Cause confusion and delusion. And perhaps it still is, but like I said, yeah, it's like the power is too strong. Yeah, it's like trading places. The power that's been pronounced on account of all that's been incurred at this point is way too dominant, too strong to be manipulated or to be what's the right word I'm looking for when we're talking, to be perverted with passion, creativity, or corrupted. There it is, corrupted. Yeah, okay, corrupted, that's the strongest word with all that I've said today about the corrupt system, corrupt intentions, even, you know, between the sexes, the patriarch and the matriarch, the corrupted creativity there from a national perspective, of course, beyond the United States for sure. But this is the trade-off here, as I said. It's like where there was a misuse and abuse of power to corrupt and cause, you know, to attack and disenfranchise vulnerable energies of any sort and kind. Here is the exchange of energy between the 9 and the 8. It's like what was meant for projection is now becoming a personal experience. And that is actually the fear of, you know, this is the anxiety here, to actually have to become the casualty of your own corruption on any scale, whether this is a man, a nation, a country, a household, because that could be a father, it could be a, you know, a father figure, a grandfather, or uncle, some patriarch of the family. It could be a community leader, a public leader, anyone that holds a position of power or influence that did not do well with it, one way or another, is going to have to ultimately just live in the shoes of those that were disenfranchised. And that's a real scary thought when you think about it for the nation. For those that have caused so much corruption and imbalance to now have to somehow live in that order, to not have enough to feed their families, or not have, you know, the luxury of freedom. To be for their legacies to be dismantled, perhaps all that they've worked for and any promise of the future, as a matter of fact, to be dismantled right before their eyes, to feel stuck and stagnant, to be able to really do anything, like to, you know, to be able to pick yourself up by the bootstraps, because the support system isn't there for you. You know, you're not free in spirit or in truth, because both of these could be jailhouse cards, especially the 8 of Swords and the 9 of Wands, matter of fact. So yeah, a lot of like mental imprisonment here, energetically bound and binded. That's the karmic exchange here. To be a casualty of your own corruption. That means if you were the head of a household and you were abusive, and you weren't covering the well-being of that partnership or that legacy. You'll have to feel that in some way, some expression of your life. And back to the Jonah thing, because it does kind of come full circle. It's like you would have had, it's a matter of learning, being enlightened to the harmony, fairness, and balance of life, of creation. So for those that resisted that natural education, just by way of natural relationships that would eventually teach you how to treat people, just by way of humanity, you know what I mean, of just natural humanity. You would have learned that just in, how you wanted to be treated, and without it having to be such a harsh lesson as it turns out to be on the back end when someone refused to submit to that lesson, that teaching, that knowing, and push back on it at every turn to just kind of no, I got my own school of thought. I got my own way of being, against the grain of spiritual law and just what is fair and just, human to human. When it comes down to it, it's not really punishment. It really is just learning the lesson somehow, some way. It's just that you didn't learn it the easy route. You took all types of shortcuts, cheated on the test, and stole other people's work, stole other people's papers, and plagiarized, and, tried to figure out your way of being accountable and responsible for the information at every turn, and still, to try to come up and get an A and get into some Ivy League school, and then it's like you get there and then you're not really able to keep up, because you get into the Ivy Leagues, you can't really keep up because you didn't really learn the information. You didn't really learn the material. You just fudged your way through the entire process. And then you flunk out. And then you have to go back to the drawing board, maybe go to community college, or I don't know what the hell you need to do, some lesser school or whatever, to get back up to that level of achievement that you would have gotten to anyway, but now having to take that, like I said, that long route around, where you thought you were making a shortcut, you actually made your route longer, because you're going to get these lessons regardless, or you're going to live to learn, or you're going to die. You're going to die. So it's like, so what I was saying about Jonah, he could have gone straight away as he was guided. He didn't. So he had to take the long lesson, the long division route. But he eventually still got there, because it was universally ordained and ordered for him to, because there was more than just him at stake if he didn't. It was a whole nation of people that, little did he know, were hanging on his very word, the transmission of the word that he had to carry with him, the life lesson that he was bringing along. Now, like I said, he was going there anyway, but to have to take the route of being thrown out the boat and then swallowed by a whale and all, it's like, in hindsight, you would have rather just gone, right? So in hindsight, some of these folks are wishing that they would have just played fair, played honorably, used their power justly and responsibly. But the lesson will be solidified in having to experience the trauma that was inflicted. Like, okay, good. You will wish, you do wish that you had, but now you're going to know exactly why you should have. so it can be imprinted upon your being. If you have the strength to, you know, the resilience to make it through that lesson, as Jonah did come out of that 40-day, 40-night cycle. But you certainly will have the enlightenment at that point that you resisted on the front end. So it all comes around full circle for anyone. It's just for the point of evolution and pure empowerment. Again, teaching us how to treat one another, even to how to treat and revere ourselves in a powerful form. But one way or another, you will learn, and the balance will be affirmed. The dog, yeah, exactly. Ace of Cups, and what else? And the World card. Wow. So it's the end of a cycle. And here is the overflow with the Ace of Cups. Like, here's the hit. Oh, this is the cup that was, wow, it all comes back around. Because you can no longer do what got you over. You can't cheat on the test anymore. You can't fake it till you make it. You can't borrow someone else's paper or answers. You can't plagiarize from someone else's work. It's like everybody is responsible for their own expression now. Everyone has to be accountable and responsible, and it is supreme responsibility at this point. Like it ain't immediate reaction and response to whatever it is that you express energetically. And the Ace of Cups is just like in the Four of Cups, where he was resisting that cup that was being handed down from the clouds, like that intuition, that spirit, that healing, unconditional love. Like I said, it's like not only teaching you how, because it starts with how you're loving yourself first, right? And how you reverence your own vitality and energy. And those that truly feel a great deal about themselves wouldn't be so inclined to inflict harm and hurt towards others, because you wouldn't want, you can't think very much of yourself and then have that energy, to at all cost and casualty want to elevate self. Obviously you don't think much of yourself to be able to feel like you need to do that, and where you are or what you possess or the potential that you have isn't just as impactful, that you got to go get it elsewhere or otherwise, even if it causes great harm or a great detriment to others. So there's just like this lack of healing, and also of self-love and like security that's there, which is why an imbalanced emperor such as this would be abusive in power, right? Fundamentally is for some level of insecurity of their own, that they have to overwield their authority or their influence onto others. So the Ace of Cups is like the ultimate love, like divine love, to know love from its supreme source and be infused with that vitality, so that you couldn't act out of anything less once you get a sip of this, like how it truly feels to be loved, appreciated, taken care of, protected, secure, at peace. You wouldn't want anything else for anyone else. So perhaps this is how the world gets to be transformed, by these soft and hard lessons, whichever you pick, however you choose. Here's the power of choice right here, and how you respond to your lot is how the world ultimately gets to be holistically transformed in one way, shape, or form to this divine expression of love overall, above all, for all. That's the happy ending of it. That if you can live through the lesson and, get through the tests, this would be the final outcome. the matriculation of sorts for creation, to live in this experience of love for self and love for one another and love overall for creation, for the world. The most sustainable force that we can co-create in general, that is the sustainable power here. Everything else is fleeting, threatening, destructive, diminishing, disempowering, and would incite these hard lessons to then have to be enacted to reverse the miseducation, or reform, I should say, the miseducation. Yeah, so it's like it's coming through one way or another. It may be, like I said in the beginning with the Six of Swords, it could be a gradual process, like a move. Oh, okay, the movement from this to that, old world to new world. Okay, I get it. It's like some of us that are so anxious to get there or be there, and everyone there with us would want to snap our fingers and it be this love, universal love for all, world peace in an instant. And, perhaps universally, comparative to our perspective of time, it is an instant, or it is a snap or a blink of an eye. But right now, in the present moment, it feels like, are we there yet? When's the next rest stop? When's the next, destination? But it matters to just keep going in the enlightenment that we personally acquire along the way. And in faith, knowing that is the impression, even seemingly on a small scale, that is bringing about the greater advancement of evolution on a much larger scale, one of which we may or may not ever truly see in totality, but that everything that we're doing now is contributing to that reality. Interesting. Yeah, here's that reproductive and proactive creative force here, with access to supreme power. So it's happening. Be encouraged that what you're doing is making a difference, and just do it at your own pace. Do it in your own time. There's no race here. There's no one to keep up with. You're only maintaining the speed of divine order as it's been determined for you. As I said, like with Jonah, if you get called to this or that, answer to it. Don't make it any longer or harder on yourself or on creation overall than it needs to be, because just as in that story, there's some greater body of creativity that is dependent upon the value that you bring to it. There's no pressure in that, though. That's just there's an honor in that badge, in that responsibility, and just knowing that you're already doing it just by staying in alignment to the purest passion of you, and with the purest passion of you, answering to your intuitive force as it speaks in real time. That's all you need to be accountable for. It matters for the rest of us and for the whole of us. So, all right, I'm gonna leave it there. I think that's all I have to say. Yeah, because the forces that would like to oppose still at every point in this spread are powerless at this point, as long as you're still holding firm to what your confidence and the courage that has been strengthened through this process, this energetic education that you've committed yourself to. It's like no one can take your diploma, your degree of energetic achievement from you at this point, lest you relinquish it. And even still, it can never be discounted, because even if you don't have the piece of paper, the diploma itself, it's already been achieved in your energetic field. This is who you are. This is the power that you will. This is the kinetic potential that you have to be changed, to create change, and to sustain and make change as you're uniquely guided to do. So anything that inorganically would want to interfere with that natural order is only an enemy by his own hand, literally creating, as I've said, creating themselves, himself, itself to be a casualty of their own corruption, which is what the Seven of Swords is all about. Always more of an enemy to himself than it truly is to anything or anyone else. So keep doing what you're doing. You're doing amazing. It's making a difference. And I believe that we may not see how so in totality. I don't know, maybe we will, but soon you will at least see how so thus far. And that will be enough to continue to empower you to keep going, keep doing what you're doing without fear and relentlessly. All right. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. Until next time, as always, I leave you with peace.